Hello, and welcome to episode 281 of the Epic Film Challenge to 1,001 Movies You Must See Before You Die from 1961. Directed by Jacques Demy, we have Lola. This is the first feature film from Jacques Demy, and the first of his that I've seen. I've seen some of his short film work. I know he has a number of films in the book, and I have the essential Jacques Demy Criterion box set, and Lola is the first one on the docket for that box set, and it stars Anouk Aimée as the titular Lola, but I would say that it's kind of a film that's about two characters really, Lola and Roland, or probably the closer French pronunciation would probably be more closer to something like Roland, perhaps, but I'll just refer to him as Roland, played by Marc Michel. And it's about, well, the film opens with well, it opens with something else, but when we get into like the film proper, it begins with Roland, who's kind of just, he's got a job, but he kind of loses it, and he's kind of a bit of a drifter character in a sense. He has quite a purpose in his life, and he goes to a local bar, and he has friends there and stuff. And I loved the kind of the interactions between characters in this film, the sense of kind of friendship and just almost the excitement of human interaction at times was really interestingly captured. This is kind of referred to by Jacques Demy as a musical without music. And I almost understand what that means. Not fully, but there's just something about the way that characters interact with themselves in this film that feels different than your average kind of just drama. And this is very, all shot on location, and I love that about most films that were made in a different time and a different place than my own. So this was filmed in Jacques Demy's hometown. I believe it's a town or maybe a city. I'm not sure. I think it's a city of Nantes, where I think there's a film that his wife Agnès Varda made that's called Jacques in Nantes or something like that. It's about his childhood in that area, but the fact that he made his first feature film in a place where he grew up, I think again the pronunciation is more like Nantes, but I'm not very good at my French. So Nantes, it's a great location. It's kind of like a seaside area. You don't see much of the sea, but it has so much character to it. And I just imagine if I had had the amazing fortune to be able to direct a film in my hometown, all the places I would use, the interesting angles, are all there in my brain already. Much would have been the same way, I think, with Demi. And there's a great location outside of Lola's apartment, which is just like, it's like a back alley, and it's got sort of like a railing that the sailor slides down, and there's these posters on the wall, I think, that are faded, and it actually reminded me at times of some of the locations in Milan in the animated film Porco Rosso. There's just a feeling of a bit of a rundown European, or just not even rundown, but just like a European back streets with character. There's a real lived-in feel to it. I just love that little. You see it twice in the film. That little kind of alleyway. There's just something about it. It's not It's not clean. It's not neat. It's not straight, and it's just I don't want to say exotic, but it has character. And there are places like that in my hometown that I would love to immortalize on film. And so I almost felt connected to him in that way of just like knowing. I bet he used that because he'd always seen it and thought that would look good in a film, or that would be a good place to kind of set this sequence. Anyway, Lola is a dancer. She has a young son, and she has a bit of a kind of very casual relationship with a sailor, an American sailor who's come in, and they have a bit of a fling. But she's really hung up on the man who fathered her son, and she actually comes across Roland halfway through the film, and so we're setting up Roland as this kind of drifter character who's trying to find some purpose, and he bumps into Lola, who does dancing at night and stuff, and she's kind of just trying to support her son. One thing that bugged me about the film, I have to say, is at first I thought it was going to be a film that takes place over one 24-hour period, which I love when films do that, but it's a couple of days, I think. But the first maybe 45 minutes of the film, I think, is one day. And as the day is going on, it's like, he goes to his job at like 2:30, and then he loses his job, Roland, and then he goes somewhere else, and then he bumps into Lola, which kind of sparks the rest of the film. And they knew each other when they were younger, Roland and Lola, when they were kind of teenagers, and they've reconnected, and it's kind of an exciting time for both of them. Him because he's in love with her and always has been, and her because she's reminded of her past, I suppose, in simpler times when things weren't quite as complicated and difficult as they might be for her now as an adult woman supporting a child on her own. So where was I going with that? All right, so she's like, I gotta take my son to school, and it's like 6:30 in the evening, and then it just, the time kept wearing on. I'm like, well, it can't be 6 in the morning. I just feel like that kind of very tiny detail slightly hampered my enjoyment, because the whole time I was trying to keep track of what time is it, and why is he going to school that late, so that just seemed like an unnecessary detail that I would say dragged the film down, because it didn't, but it caught me up a little bit a few times. And so now we have this Roland and Lola situation, and he actually comes into a potential job that might be a bit dangerous, that could perhaps give him a bit more purpose and get him out of Nantes, and kind of, spark maybe a bit of purpose and sense of, drive in his life. But now that he's bumped into Lola, he's not so sure. And he also comes across this woman and her young daughter in just a random shop, a bookshop. And he gets invited over for dinner. He's going to lend this young girl his English dictionary. And just this little girl and her kind of story that develops. And there's this wonderful sequence where she goes off with the sailor in the fairground. And there's a beautiful sequence in slow motion that was just really an arresting image to watch unfold in slow motion, I suppose. But, I can see how that would look strange where there's this adult hanging around with a 13, 14-year-old girl. But it was a weird echo of a story that Lola had told of when she was the age of this young girl. And I found that an interesting comparison. And in a way, that felt musical to me. It was almost like a rhyme within the story. It was almost like two verses that were kind of connecting to each other in some way, and maybe that's part of where the musical without music comes into it. But I really enjoyed that stuff, even though you can kind of questionably look at it as an adult hanging out with a teenage girl for, seemingly no apparent reason. Nothing untoward is hinted at or happens, but, it's something that you just kind of think of, I suppose. And then there's kind of an interesting third act spanner in the works in the form of Lola's former partner coming back into the picture. And where it goes from there is really inconclusive. And it's a lot like life, I think. And I think films with endings like this, where nothing gets really wrapped up it feels like the film gets wrapped up in a neat little package. But I just feel like there's a sense that that's not really what's going to happen there. It's one of those, I think Richard Linklater once called it that's a fake ending. That's not really what's going on. I think he was talking about the film Voyage in Italy with Ingrid Bergman. I think it was Ingrid Bergman and Rossellini. It's been a long time since I've seen that film, and I can barely remember that. So the funny thing is, when I finish this whole challenge, if I ever do, I'm firm that I want to. I'd have to start all over again to remember everything. There's so many films over such a long period of time. But anyway, regardless, the ending of this film was a bit of a head scratcher at times, but it also felt fitting to the kind of story that had been portrayed from the very opening of this film. It's a story that you drop into these characters' lives in a very short span of time, and you get a flavor of what they're going through, and you get a flavor of, I think, the uncertainty of young life when you're an adult. You're not a teenager anymore. You're not 20, and you're still trying to find some kind of purpose, and you're not quite sure what to do next. And these two characters cross paths with each other again, already having a past and a history with each other. And it seems like, well, great, let's just get together and they can help each other move forward. But sometimes life isn't that simple. And so I like that it was a film that on the surface presented a neat ending, but to me felt a bit more loaded with uncertainty. So I really liked that. Is it a film you should see before you die? I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like I'd have to go and see his other films that are in the book and say, okay, is, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, a much more accomplished film than this? This is a film where I believe the original negative is no longer existing, and so, the restoration of this was fairly significant to kind of bring it to the quality that it's now available in. I mean, that's just talking about the visual quality of the transfer, nothing to do with the quality of the film, but I have seen it written that this is kind of an unsung film in Jacques Demy's filmography, because it's not, the Young Girls of Rochefort or whatever it is, the kind of the bright, vivid, colorful musicals that he made. And obviously this is not a musical, but it's, maybe the seed of where he might go next, I suppose. But it's the only film of his I've seen, and judged based purely on that, it's an exciting start. I loved it. I just loved the feel of it. I loved all the locations and just seeing, different places and just hanging out with characters. It's the kind of stuff. Well, I didn't sound like myself when I said characters then. Characters. That's really weird. I'm going to go back and clip that. It didn't sound weird when I said characters. Hanging out with characters. Like, it was like someone else kind of dropped. Holy shit! Someone else dropped into my brain. Dropped. I'll leave that in for free. It was like someone dropped into my brain and started speaking for me. And that was not my accent. Although I don't feel like I have an accent. I'm going off into complete tangent, but I don't feel like I have an accent. I feel like I just have a boring, dull, droning voice, which is why I sometimes fucking hate editing videos, because it's just that stupid voice over and over again. But yeah, Lola. Back to that. Is it a film you should see before you die? No, I don't think so. I loved it. It's my kind of thing. It really is, but I don't think it's an essential for most people. And I think maybe you could put something a bit more universally or uniformly great in its place. But then again, do I really even believe in that? I don't know. I do like championing the underdogs in films that, again, this is in the books. It's already lauded, I suppose, but I don't feel like it is one that I would jump to say, oh, you should see this film before you die. You know what I mean? It's going to be a no from me, even though I loved it. I don't know why I feel the need to be stingy with it, but I couldn't see myself recommending this film to anyone. But for me, it really suited my tastes, and I wanted more by the time the ending came around, but I was really satisfied with it at the same time. I just really enjoyed the film. Anouk Aimée was really good as Lola. I thought she had kind of very vibrant personality, and it felt like someone who was also trying to mask some of her problems by her outward personality, I suppose. And just the stuff with her son was kind of like, oh God, like I really felt a kind of fatherly instinct to kind of be there for that kid. I don't know, something about it. Lola, I loved it, but I wouldn't say it's a film you should see before you die, I don't think. And that's sometimes okay too. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.